Can we just spend 60 seconds on your career of basically telling us all what you've done in a nutshell regarding research?
Yeah, research I started in serious research I started in 94. 95 I met John Armstrong and did work with him on the Harvey and Lee book for about 5 years. At the time I worked on it, it was not called Harvey and Lee.
What was it called?
It wasn't called anything. It was just called an Oswald project, I guess. And I was much happier with that. I was much happier that we would try and get some sense into the biography of Oswald. Like going through FBI files and CIA files and whatever was available. And doing interviews as well. We did interviews, quite a few interviews. And come 2000, John seemed to sort of go on to this Harvey and Lee tack, which I didn't particularly like at the time. So we had a slight disagreement. He fell out for a year, but then, got back to being friends again after a year. And then I went really in a separate direction. I went more towards CIA research, which interested me more than anything else. And I've been doing that ever since. So I've been doing that for maybe 12 years, 13 years. Yeah.
You go to NARA, you've been there a lot?
A lot, yeah. I spent 6 months sessions there sometimes. So.
Okay. So let's talk about a few matters.
I mean, if anybody wants to talk about NARA as well, obviously,
yeah.
Can help out there.
Yeah. For those that don't know, NARA is the National Archives in Washington, where all the goods are supposedly are supposed to be. So let's just talk about a few things with Oswald in regard to his Dallas Police Department interrogation, as per the Fitz and the bookout notes, where he basically said that he didn't own a rifle, did not purchase the gun from Seaport traders, didn't shoot anyone out front with Bill Shelley and so forth. Do you believe Oswald's answers?
Yes, I do.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't believe he shot anybody that day. I think the guy was entirely innocent of that. I think he was intelligence connected, for sure. So that's my opinion on that. Yeah.
All right. Okay. A bit before that, we've got the Carlos Bringier affair. What was that really about?
That looks like a CIA production, to draw attention to the fact, draw attention to Oswald and his connections to the FPCC. Whether that was more than the FPCC, whether it was the actual precursor to setting them up for Dallas, I don't know. But there was definitely a complete setup, and Bringier was part of that. Bringier is a very difficult character to get to know, to understand, I think.
Why is it?
Because he tends to duck and dive a lot. I mean, and you tend to get the impression that he wasn't connected to the Central Intelligence Agency. He was connected to the FBI. But I think there were indicators around that he was perhaps more connected to the agency. When you look at the summer of '63, it gets quite interesting because Jeff Morley's done the Joannides stuff, and we know that George Joannides, who was a very senior CIA officer, he had a house in New Orleans. He was certainly in New Orleans. Another heavy hitter in the CIA Cuban operation group was William Kent, and he was there in the summer of '63. And I've just learned that an even heavier guy from the agency was down in New Orleans in the summer of '63, called Carl Tretton. Carl was down there, so he had you had this nexus of CIA, heavy-duty CIA people, coincidentally, in New Orleans at the same time as Lee Harvey Oswald was down there.
I know that Joannides it's been said that he basically was like the paymaster for the DRA.
Sure.
Yeah, all right. Okay, what's the connection between Oswald's stay in Russia and the Gary Palace U2 incident?
Oh God, that's a long question.
Well, we've got the time.
Well, I learned through looking at CIA handbooks and regulations and dissemination processes that when Oswald defected, the information was not handled in a normal way. It gets back to Larry Hancock's anomalies yesterday, because it seems that the security office before the defection asked for a single channel dissemination on Oswald information. In other words, ahead of time, before Oswald defected, they asked for information. Any information that came in on Oswald was to go only to the security office and nowhere else. It never made it to the Soviet Russia division. It only ever, on defection, all those early documents went to the security office. One particular bit, which was the security research staff. The security research staff was joined at the hip with Angleton CI-SIG. They were just like, two sides of the same coin. So I tried to figure out why that took place, and the only thing I could work out was the dissemination to the security officer, the security research staff, and Angleton's group was done as a mole hunting exercise. That's the only, because there was when I say it was a single channel dissemination, it did go one other place in CIA, went to the Recording Integration Division indexing, which is like a passive location. In other words, once it reaches there, it doesn't go anywhere. But if you're an agency, you work for the agency, and you want to look for an identity, for a name, you want to run a trace, you fill up a form, which is a Form 362. Oh. And then on that Form 362, you have to leave your name, your extension number, date, whatever it is. So if anybody came looking in RID indexing, which is passive, the information stays there, Angleton and the guy at SRS, who was Bruce Soley, probably, would have red flagged RID indexing. So if you go and look at RID indexing and you're looking for someone that you think might be a mole, it's there because that person has requested Oswald information. So there you go, there you have it. So Oswald would have been loaded up, I think, with, the only thing I could think of, the information worth having would be the U2 information, based on the fact that he was in Atsugi. Or he may never have been anywhere near, knowing anything about the U2. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Because of the political embarrassment the Soviets were feeling. I mean, they were beside themselves, and they were, furious with the overflights. It was a huge political embarrassment coming down from the Politburo, Yeah. And I have many, many, many Russian protests to America on the U2 overflights. Copies of those.
Do you think?
In addition, I have Gary Power's debriefing as well. One of his debriefings.
Malcolm, do you think Power's mission was sabotaged?
Oh God, that's an even bigger question.
Doesn't look like
The idea being to sabotage the summit.
Gary Jr. says no.
But the outcome,
he says something.
the immediate outcome was.
I've debated with Gary on it.
But the immediate outcome was the cantonment or the sabotage of the summit meeting.
Well, Dulles so testified. He said it well. No, he didn't. I get that wrong. He testified that there was a flame out. That was it. Engine malfunction. That's what he testified. In other words, it wasn't hit by a.
Weren't the pilots supposed to?
Drunk missile guys.
Weren't the pilots supposed to
Sweater-esque.
fall on their sword, so to speak, if they found themselves
Take
in
a
that
suicide
situation?
pill.
Weren't the pilots supposed to kill themselves, basically, because they
Yeah,
were
they were supposed to
supplied?
have a cyanide.
They was,
Yeah.
the pilots didn't do that.
No, it didn't.
No.
Fletcher Prouty thinks that's a flare out and
Well, he said it was sabotage.
sabotage. Yeah.
That's right. For the Paris Peace Conference.
Yeah.
The
I
Russians
don't
claim
know.
that they
You can
developed a
you
missile,
can speculate every way to Sunday on this.
but they say they
But I
developed a
mean,
special missile that
it
would...
is an eerie coincidence, isn't it? You know, the peace conference in Paris was going on. You know, to really screw that up. I mean, they shouldn't have been flying in operation on May Day. I think. So, it stinks, yeah.
I have-
But proving it is another thing, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, regarding proof, was Oswald ever in Mexico, and if so, what was he trying to achieve?
Yeah.
You know, back in '98, I had a long discussion with John Newman at the archives. And I said to him, well, he said to me, what are you doing about Mexico City? I said, I'm doing nothing about Mexico City. And he said, why's that? I said, well, it's a swamp. It's a total swamp. And he looked at me and he said, well, it's a swamp that you have to get into. He said to me. So, but I've always tried to avoid it. You know, I have a lot of Mexico City files, and periodically people ask me about things, and I break into those files. And I think Jeff Morley was the last person I broke into before. But you know, I copied the stuff and the new stuff that came out and kept up to date with it. But I'm not really. I mean, it's interesting that all the early reports seem to talk about Oswald driving. You know, Oswald in a car, Oswald driving. You know.
Really?
Into Mexico City, into Mexico. You know, a lot of those early reports. The Alvarado stuff is always a very strange thing as well. There's just so many weird things in the Mexico City story. Understanding, making sense of it, I think is very difficult. Maybe that's how it's supposed to be.
So the jury's still out there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there may be more to come. There may be more to come. I think there's quite a bit of still classified material in Mexico City. There's a great deal of classified material. The stuff I think would be a benefit come 2017 would be security classified testimony, for sure, because that's they've really dug their heels in on that. Specifically, the testimony of Bruce Soley and the testimony of Robert Gambino. Interestingly, both of these guys are security office guys. Gambino, I had his notes, the researcher's notes for Gambino, and that's where I was able to stick together how the dissemination process worked, because he gave it up. And the notes, we have about 5 pages of notes, probably well over 100 pages of testimony, so there's a lot to come from the security classified testimony files. Interestingly, some things have been withdrawn. The last time I was there, which was last month, I think it was last month, it was March, I noticed that there's a document, there's a record integration division guy called Larson, whose testimony is just fantastic. It's almost 200 pages. And as a sort of like an intro into understanding how CIA moves its paper around, it's just absolutely fascinating. And that stuff, that testimony was not in the files. And it said, there was a pull slip and it said, withdrawn by another agency, which I thought was pretty strange. So you've got some things that were there that aren't there, you know, and then you've got the stuff come in, the security classified testimony that there's going to be two boxes, two big grey file boxes, and I think those are going to be, you know, I would get the magnifying glasses on those. In addition, another security office guy called John Dempsey, his church committee testimony has been denied in full forever, and that's supposed to be released next year. That's 186 pages. So.
Is there anything else in that pile? Because I've seen the list and it's pretty big actually.
Oh, it's masses of stuff. I mean, the difficult areas for the agency are going to be cover and corporations, proprietaries, banks, financial, the stuff where the tentacles go. I mean, that's where a difficult area for
them to see that out in the open.
Yeah, I mean, you can see why. I mean, if you look at the Robert Kennedy assassination, I mean, I found a document which was where they were, the cover group, the central cover group, no, not central cover group, the commercial cover group, which is part of CIA, where they place people in businesses, corporations, companies. The House Select Committee had given them a name. They'd run a name, and the name was Joe Campisi. So they ran it through the system. They ran it right through CIA, and lo and behold, the commercial cover group pop up the name Joseph Campisi. But it wasn't the Joe Campisi, the mafia guy. It was a Joe Campisi that was CEO of Belova Watch. And what you discover from that document is Belova Watch is a cover company for the CIA. Well, if you think back to the Ambassador Hotel and Bobby Kennedy, whose convention was at the Ambassador Hotel? Belova Watch. I mean, this is where the tentacles go. I mean, you can drive yourself nuts thinking, you know, if you're a diehard conspiracy theorist, you could think, well, you know, Bobby Kennedy gets shot down, and there's a CIA cover company work. They got their convention that night, you know, Belova Watch.
Yeah, I remember the documentary made by Shane O'Sullivan where this whole thing basically, where he thought...
Well, he got shot down. He got shot down because, you know, they said, oh, well, you know, it's these two guys were working for Belova Watch. Well, yeah. Who are Belova Watch? They're a friendly corporation, you know. You can drop people into it. I'm not saying they did, but maybe they did. I don't know.
Yeah.
Suspicious.
What are your thoughts as to whether Angleton was running a, between quotation marks, a barium metal operation using Oswald that was used by the plotters to assist the cover-up as proposed by Peter Dale Scott?
It's a possibility, you know. I wouldn't, you know, second guessing Angleton or his motives or what he was doing. I mean, it's really, I think Angleton is a really difficult area. I think he was absolutely involved in the Oswald defection, for sure, because you could see that with the way the documents moved. They didn't go where they were supposed to go. They went to his shop and they went to the security research staff. So yeah. Peter's probably right on that, I would say. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you've been to NARA quite a lot. You practically lived there.
Yeah, true.
So, what's the closest thing you've ever seen to a smoking gun in the existing records?
Well, you know.
What fell through the cracks?
Well, no, yeah, but I mean the good stuff, you know, the stuff that, you know, you dream of getting. I got too early. I was still, you know, as green as cabbage. And one day I got the Fair Play for Cuba Committee files unredacted, totally unredacted.
Oh.
I had them for 3 days. Then I let them go. And then I realized afterwards what I'd actually had in my hands, you know. You know, all sorts of, you know, all the informants' names, everything, you know, the whole thing. I must admit, even then, I did think it was peculiar. I couldn't see any redactions in the documents, in the files. But it just goes to show, you know, that even organisations like NARA can make mistakes.
But that's what it actually is, a human error, just like the
It
Master
was,
Day
it
Shard
was, yeah,
document.
it was a new person into the archives. I was dealing with. They'd only just arrived there, and they just went to the wrong area. They went to the classified area, pulled out a classified car, which was the whole of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee FBI files. So. 24 boxes.
But you didn't copy it.
I copied some of it, yeah, because I hate to say it, but one of our researchers' names was on in one of the documents as an informant, and not our British researchers. I'm talking about American researchers. So I found that at that time I found that interesting. I mean, it was something that one always suspects, that the research community would be penetrated by all sorts of people,
So which one is it?
Bart,
Yeah.
number 5. Number 5. Bush.
Ah, yes. George Herbert Walker Bush. Did he have any CIA associations in '63?
That's a tricky question, isn't it? George Bush looks like he was working for the agency, but trying to get proof on that is very difficult, The Assassination Records Review Board put that request in to CIA, and they did their searches. There's a part of CIA which is called the AARC, which is the Agency Archive Record Center, which is in Alexandria, and they went through everything. Allegedly, they went through everything there, and they couldn't find anything to say that George Bush was employed before 1976, I think, when he became DCI. But they did find what they call a job number. Job number 80 something or other. Everything, all their job numbers begin with 80, so it was job number 8.